Hello and welcome to another Office 365 Hours. My name is Christian Buckley. I'm the Microsoft Go-to-Market Director here at AvePoint and also a Microsoft MVP and Regional Director. And I am joined today by Stacy Deere-Strole, good friend of mine, fellow Microsoft MVP, Office Apps and Services MVPs. I think there's the most I'm going to make sure that's muted. I think the most Office Apps and Services MVPs. I think it's the biggest category of MVPs. She's also a longtime organizer of the Cincinnati SharePoint User Group. Have you guys renamed? Is it still the SPUG?
So it's actually Tri-State User Group.
Okay, there you go. And regional SharePoint Saturday events. And she's the owner of Cincinnati, Ohio-based Focal Point Solutions. Good morning, Stacy.
Good morning, Christian. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's a fun topic, and we'll just get ready to jump right into it. For those that are watching on the live stream, of course, if you have any questions or comments, we'll be monitoring on LinkedIn as well. So join us there on the AvePoint page of LinkedIn. And all right, so today we're discussing the topic of change management. Exciting topic. I know we both care deeply on the topic. We were chatting away before we got started here on this. So much good dialogue is lost when the record button is not, the live button is not going. But change management's influence on successful collaboration and what that means. So let's start out. Question one, let's begin with the basics. What is the role of change management? Broadly speaking, change management in an organization.
So the role that it plays is probably not always the role it should play. I will start off with that, but it's a role that regardless what kind of project you have, whether it's small, medium, or large, when it comes to change management, it's something that always needs to be considered, taking into, what's going to happen. So what is your process? We all know I'm a huge governance person. What is your process? Document this process. What do you do? But a lot of times you find that is not done. But the role should be just as important as the project itself, because a project is always going to have twists and turns. People change in and out of projects depending on how long projects are. So to make sure that it has a very dominant role in a project is very important.
And I know you've heard me say this before, and I've done it, you said it many times, that organizations that are good at change have a competitive advantage over those that fail. And it's often why you have organizations that maybe they just don't have the resources or they don't have the process in place where they recognize, hey, we need to go get a third party, a vendor like Focal Point to come in to help us with this, because to manage us through this larger change. It's not just about the technology. It's not just about deployment, because a lot of technology, it's becoming, especially in the Microsoft ecosystem, more and more intuitive. And so in theory, you shouldn't need to hire an outside group to come in to upgrade or deploy some new piece. But a lot of organizations that recognize their shortcomings there then do bring in experts to do it in a quicker, more efficient, more optimal way.
Yeah, and I tell you what, and I know a lot of people wouldn't think about this, but the culture of a company has a lot to do with it. I mean, that's probably one of the key things. There are companies out there that their culture is change very little. So then it's, you don't notice it, right? And then you have companies out there that they're willing to take that big change. They want to get into, the mainstream. They want to get to the latest and greatest because they know the more efficient they become with their tools and technology, the more, like you said, more competitive they are, the more money they make. So it has a lot to do with culture. I actually was told at a client once when I was brought in because of a huge change, just like you said, and when the project manager literally said that goes against our culture, and I was like, well, if you know if this was working for you, you wouldn't have hired me to come in and help you.
Right.
So your culture has to change.
I was going to, for the next question here. It's actually, and I was going to make a comment, and I was like, well, that's actually the next question. Question 2, in your experience with customer deployments of SharePoint, Teams, and other collaboration productivity solutions, what is the state of the typical customer's change management capabilities? And before you answer, the comment I was going to make is that, that resistance that you just talked about. I mean, that's the thing. It's I ran into this again and again and again, whether I was a full-time employee at or a consultant brought in to work with the customer. They want that expertise, that want that guidance. You lay out the plan, the strategy, and they immediately push back on that. No, it's like, well, that's what you hired me to do.
I tell you what, sometimes I throw change management in that same category as governance. It's always the first thing that's nixed out of a statement of work, even though if we don't have governance, we can paint ourselves into a corner. You're going to waste money, the whole 9 yards, right? Change management's the same way. And I can always kind of read a client with, if I hear the word culture come up, I know that change management is not something that's well done within that organization. Because if they're basing things on their culture, then they're not basing them on change within the organization to do more, to be more efficient, to, bring in new technologies or whatever the project may be. It's always a clear sign that their change management process, if they have one, is not where it needs to be.
Since you brought up the G word, and I think that there's probably some people out there that are asking this question too. Like, what's the difference between change management and governance, in your view?
Yeah, so governance is really the policies and procedures, security, your baseline of how your organization actually runs, right?
Yeah.
So, step one, for this process, 1, 2, 3, 4. Change management is, oh, wait a minute, this process is changing because of X reason. We have to put in, some sort of change management to get it take it down the new path, right? So then you have to update your governance because now you update your governance because your process has changed, either with new technology, new software, etc. So they play a part of each other, but governance is, hey, this is how it is, and change management is, okay, now we need to change that. This is how it is, and how do we do that? So.
I know that there are a lot of methodologies that are out there. I used to say back in my project management days, many, many years ago, like, I don't care what methodology that you have, as long as you have one in play. And like with PMP certifications, and I had a lot of direct reports that I would pay for them to go and get their certification. And I would always say, please do not come back and try to implement 100% of what you learned.
Yeah.
Figure out and adjust for the culture of the organization, what makes sense here. But a simple methodology or model for change management, it really comes down to my experience, 3 phases. So you have that planning or preparations, like getting ready for it. You have the management, which is the activities of the change management. What are we actually doing? And then you have the ongoing improvement, the life cycle of change that happens, including reviewing the measurement, your reporting up, the executive sponsors, kind of all those different pieces. Based on those, I don't know if you have a specific methodology that you follow, but where would you say that most organizations fall short?
So you hit one of the things that is like one of my drivers is, the benefits. what have you gained from the change? And that's where a lot of people, they're like, well, we just need to make this change because of X. Okay, but that turns into dollars, right? How much does that change, one, costing you, and what is your return on that change, right? If you're just making a change just to make it and it's not giving any benefit to the company, you might want to rethink the whole strategy of what you're actually doing, right? Because if it's not helping you, why?
That's a good thing. I would say that what is an example, would you say, of an organization making a change for change's sake without having gone through that process?
Oh, I don't know if I can actually repeat the one.
Well, but I would say that a lot of technology solutions.
Yeah.
It's easy for I almost think of it as like politicians. Something's not going well. Let's go start a war somewhere.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how like a lot of IT departments look at. They're looking for the next. Not maybe this is a rash generalization. Yes, I know. Not all IT departments work like this.
Right.
But to go and look at something new and shiny to distract people away without really plugging in and understand, how does this fit in? What is it actually? What's the value that's being created by this change?
Yeah, so I mean, a good one is, and I know it's talking about on-prem, but it was so valid back then because you saw it so much more clear and than you do now in the M365 world, because it changes every day, right? But when we were on-prem, like if you had a client that you had that pristine environment build is done by best practices and all that kind of stuff, what we found a lot of times, as soon as that new version came out and it was gold, they're like, all right, go build my new servers and move my data over, because you could easily migrate data from one to, to the next version up, right? So as soon as the next version, boom, done. I literally could tell you my first client, anytime a new on-prem environment version came out, that I was going to get a call and say, are you ready to build it? I mean, it was very much like that, but it didn't give them any benefit. On some of the versions it had no benefit to them. They didn't gain anything by it. They didn't get really any new functionality or, with what they were using, but it was the fact that they wanted to be on the new because they had dollars for it and they wanted to do it. But I mean, you could have used those dollars to improve your processes within the environment instead of the environment itself, and it would have given them a bigger impact to the company.
I've got a great example. Again, going back to the painful personal experience here, but that working with a dev team that I helped manage for about a year, we had a number of systems that were built on an early version of SharePoint. And I believe it was on a 2007, environment SharePoint. But they had gone and built automation around software configuration management, around their work processes. It worked for that organization, and they relied on it for their daily and weekly the scrums, their action lists, like everything that they were going and doing. And so the company mandated, because of licensing or whatever, that hey, we're going to move everybody up to the latest version of SharePoint. And the team went in and said, like, please do not change. Like, we have no added benefit from this. We have built scripts. We've built tools that will break. We've looked at this. It will cost more to make the change and delay. And the organization, because a decision was made up on top without having the proper change management and review and discussion of why. And so an executive made a decision. They forced they made IT went in and made the change. The development team broke everything, and the same executive was bewildered at why the next version got delayed. It's like, and it actually was worse than they had. They tried this as like, oh, you're just making it sound like it's a bigger deal than it really is for us to go and upgrade. Microsoft tells us it's really easy to make this upgrade here. It's like Microsoft has no idea what we did to the platform to give us the system we needed for our processes. And so it kind of it broke things for a while, to put it kindly.
Yeah.
But that's a great example of having governance, having the process to review that, but the broader change management scope there wasn't the proper planning, there wasn't the discussion around that, there wasn't the buy-in that needs to happen from employees, from the owners of those systems, from the development teams, and then it obviously didn't trickle up the potential impacts to the executive as part of that decision.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I'm working with a client right now, and I have to say they made the right decisions at the right time. I know this is probably going to really floor you, but they're on WSS 3.0.
Wow.
And so they're on server 2003.
Hardcore. Yes.
They're clearly not supported, right? And they haven't been for a number of years, right? But they didn't make the change because they didn't need anything that was in any of the newer versions to make the change. What forced the change is they had a cyber attack within the last year. Now, on-prem, the version they're on, there's not a lot they can do. They can do stuff to the networks, but with the servers, I mean, they're just kind of in a hole there, right? And they've made the decision to go to the cloud. But the good thing is they hired a compliance officer, so governance. So her and I've had a lot of discussions, but they've actually taken the information that we've provided, and they're doing it. I'm like, there's like, we don't have any workflows. I think we probably should still look. Let's just run a script. Let's go out there. They have 11 workflows. Are they big workflows? Absolutely not. They're small, but if we would have migrated them, they would have broke their process, right? So having companies that listen and just say, okay, yeah, let's just double check. It makes the processes easier. We explained to them the whole change management thing as well, going into this. Hey, you guys don't know a lot about M365, and you're going to learn a lot in the next few months. We did workshops. The more they learned, the more their initial scope changed. Now it's completely different. So if you put in the right steps at the right times when you get into this and you get into the ground floor of a project, they can be very successful and work great. Now, I can also tell you that, going through the workshops and stuff, this client already has new processes, new governance that they've stated and stuff like that. So it can work if you have a client that's willing to listen and willing to change, and or have a really big driver to make them change, like a security attack. So,
it's funny to bring up that example too. I mean, that's another, I think, an evolution that's happened in the way that that we look at, who are the stakeholders that need to be sitting around the table that are part of that process. And back in my days, but telecom days in the 90s, and when I was independent consultant, building project management organizations for companies in the early 2000s, like we didn't have like a chief security officer. That was very uncommon to have that. Mm-hmm. But now you have the rise of all of these issues that are out there. I've had in the last 5 years, 2 of my clients that experienced ransomware issues there. And one was able to get out of that. The other one paid the ransom, had to change dramatically their processes after the fact. But having those people that are looking at that and looking at it from that perspective, again, could also change the rate at which you change. Could be much more rapid depending on how old those systems and processes are. But you need to have that voice, those stakeholders at the table as part of that change process.
Yeah, and that, for some companies, the one thing I'm going to say it bluntly is that I have not quite figured out yet is companies that have different entities in different countries, where they have an umbrella, like this is technically corporate, right? And you're working with one of their entities, say in the States, and they're the drivers. They're the ones that dictate what the processes are. And if say they're moving to M365 now, but they've already been on it for some time, and they've been on it long enough that they're classic, and you're migrating them into modern, right? You now have a clash of processes and how they work and how things look and how they is getting all of them on the same page, where they're okay that they're different, but realistically, that's not okay, right? There has to be some sort of change management in the process to get the others to that same point, so you're back on a level playing field. You can't have this back and forth, or you're never going to get any consistency with your change management, your implementations, your processes, governance. any of that stuff. You're going to have quite the disarray, probably a bigger situation than you had when they were in the cloud and they were on-prem, right?
Yep.
So, that's the one I've still struggled with because it's so hard, especially when they speak a different language.
Yep.
And and compliance is different from different countries. From one country to another, there's different compliance regulations that you have to adhere to as well. And trying to manage all of that and get them all on the same page is difficult, but you got to find a way. You got to find a way to make sure the company's not making a mistake, that they're moving forward with what they're doing and not moving backwards.
Well, I think that in a nutshell is the core of the importance of change management is about making sure that you have that I love that phrase, shared understanding of what we're trying to do as a business.
Mm-hmm.
But that you have the lines of dialogue open between the different regional offices, which could each have cultural differences in collaboration styles and needs and requirements. But you're collaborating. I like that word. You're collaborating around that. You're having conversations so that people are comfortable with asking questions. They know the right venue for that. They're given a chance to review, especially decisions that are going to impact their systems, their processes, and that provide that feedback so they feel that they are heard. And so that if a decision is made that will impact them negatively, meaning more work, they're going to have to go redesign workflows, whatever it is, they understand why. Because that's my experience, is that if you make decisions and you make changes and don't help users understand why that change and why it's of value, the benefit, then they look at it as like you're just changing for the sake of change because it's a new shiny object. We did not need to be at the front wave of this new feature. We were meeting our requirements with the old way. So if it's going to be new, it means that the value that's being achieved is greater than the value within the old way of doing that. You need to have that discussion, and it often doesn't happen.
And I can tell you that is probably one of the top 5 reasons why user adoption and engagement drop when people switch from one version to another or change any kind of a process. When they do it just because they want to do it, that's when they get frustrated and like, well, if it's just going to constantly change to change it, then I'm not going to use it. Right. And it impacts a lot. So, yeah.
Well, yeah, go ahead.
No, yeah, there's just a topic we could talk all day about, right?
Yeah, I know. So my final question, and there's a lot to talk about around this one, but with the rapid pace of innovation, I mean, again, if you try to follow, and I get this a lot as an MVP, and I know you do too, Stacy, like how do you keep up? And my short answer is I don't. I rely on the community to catch up with so many things that are happening. But just with the Message Center updates at Microsoft 365 alone, I mean, every week there's new things that are happening and innovation is happening at a very uneven pace. But with all that happening, what are some of the best practices? What are some of your best practices for change management and keeping up with change management?
Well, so one of the things, especially with, projects, they just change on a dime, right? And the more things come out, I think one of the things we were talking, before we went live, I have a client that before COVID, we had a nice path of what we were going to do with security and compliance. And then, everything kind of halted a little bit, got slow during COVID, and then picked back up. When we picked back up, guess what was out there? Syntex was out there. Oh, wow. Why don't we just connect this into our security and compliance project? And we demoed, and they're like, great, yay, but there's a change to the project, right? But it's a change that is going to improve upon and help them meet their requirements and their goals at a much faster pace than they were going to previously. So how we've been able to keep up with those things is we depend on each other as a team within our organization. Like we actually, with new technologies, especially like Viva and Syntex and stuff like that, we actually once a week do jump on what we call, whoever's interested, what we call a learning/training session, and whoever wants to learn that new technology will join, and we learn together and we teach each other. I'm lucky in my area. I actually have like 3 MVPs and a couple senior level people, and we just dive in, um, and we dive in and we help each other get through it. But just like you, also with the community, I mean, um, I have to say we probably got knowledge a lot faster when we were seeing each other on a more regular basis because we had a lot more discussions at that point. But since we've all been, kind of doing the home thing, when we do have some of the virtual sessions, people will start chit-chatting or conversation. But I find a lot more I've got a lot more, people from the community in my teams now than I ever had when we
Yep.
were, all traveling and everything. And it's like we all just bounce questions off each other, or you're getting email or whatever. I think the thing is like as a community, we've always been very open to help each other. And so we've tried to bring some of that into the team as well and say, hey, if you want to learn this new technology, the other thing we do in our morning scrum meeting, we do a did you know?
Hmm.
So we pick new items. Like yesterday, I showed 3 new items that are out there in the admin panel, with the network connectivity and stuff like that. And then today we had something that was updated, a new thing in Word, type of thing. But we're trying to help each other because not everybody's going to be able to keep up with it all. Like
Right.
you, I cannot. It's impossible. But you have to key in on the things that, hey, that could really help a client and focus on those. But then the rest of it help depend on your community, your user groups. Where there's been a ton of virtual events where people have been talking about as much new technology as they possibly can. And then just, as a team, figure out, people that want to learn something new and help each other. If you have that type of capability, do it. It's very powerful. It definitely is very powerful. And I have to tell you, I mean, just the learning curve, just with my team alone this last year has been just astronomical. I've got 2 interns that, man, anybody probably want to steal from me when they graduate because they are very knowledgeable because they want to learn and they're diving into this stuff when given the opportunity.
I know that for organizations, if you're a smaller company or or team and it doesn't make sense, or you're not able to go and create like an internal user group or a body that goes in, reviews and kind of pilots out a lot of this capability. That's one of the benefits around the Microsoft 365 ecosystem is
Yeah.
there are so many external groups where you can go and have those conversations. And obviously, when it's external folks, you have to be careful about what you're talking about, proprietary information.
Right.
Be careful with that, of course. But there are so many people to be able to reach out to, MVPs, others, active in your local chapter, user groups, things like that, to go and say, hey, this is what I'm experiencing. Here's what I've learned. This is what I'm trying to do. Open up, have those kinds of discussions, and people will come out of the woodwork and willing to share with you, hey, this experience, or I did something similar. This is what we learned. Or I see what you're doing. Actually, this is how you need to take a different approach. Otherwise, this is the wall you're going to hit. And have those kinds of conversations. I mean, constantly I see examples of that within the community. So that's always my number one recommendation as well, is tap into the community for help. And then, the other side where you kind of talked about, gave that example, the other thing that I would say is pilot.
Mm-hmm.
Try before you buy, before you
Yep.
make investments there. But this should be part of that open discussion. Learn about it, move forward. You can't learn from something if you're not moving forward, if you're not taking steps.
That's
So
right.
piloting is a great way to get in there and then start learning, provide that feedback, and then make decisions to expand that going forward. Or say we learned enough to know that this is not going to deliver the value that we were looking for here at this time, and you make a business decision.
Yeah, exactly. Some of the things like, but even with our clients, we will get information back from our clients as well on something that maybe they've seen that they're focusing on, and maybe we haven't focused on it before because we've like had nobody that it really fit. So we always try to drive our clients, especially the ones that get the dev environments for free and all that kind of stuff. Make sure you have one, right? Don't go try this stuff in production. And so one of the other things
So
that
many
I do,
stories just on that as well. I know.
yeah,
We're
we could go
testing
on.
on production. Great. We're developing on production. Awesome. I hope that works out for you. Yeah.
remind me to disconnect my phone.
That's right.
Right. So, but we also, I mean, what we try to do is not only educate them to do the development piece as well, have that tenant to be able to do that, but also providing them information. So, like we like try to set up a training site. We will supply information like user groups that, virtual user groups that local and virtual user groups. Any events that are going on, we share with our clients so that they know. Like we have a bunch of clients right now doing this whole security compliance thing. And there's a couple events where Mike and I are getting ready to do workshops on this stuff, right? Like, hey, this is right up your guys' alley, what you guys are looking for if you guys want to send somebody or whatever. We've supplied that information. We'll even help them set up a little training site, how they can just key in onto those types of things, put them out there so everybody else can see them as well. So occasionally we will actually get something from a client saying, hey, I saw this. I think this could really benefit X process. Of course, we don't know every process in depth like they do. So they bring it to us, and then we go out and make sure that we beef up on that if we aren't, and then so that we can able to help them in the best way. So you also want to be able to share your knowledge with your clients as well and give them that type of information, because you're not going to know everything within their organization. And so the more information that you can give them to go to the proper places to get good, valid information, the better feedback you'll also get from them and ideas and stuff like that to better help their organization.
So in short, would you say that the better that you communicate and collaborate internally, the more information you have, the better decisions that will be made?
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Well, Stacy, really appreciate your time today. Thanks for joining this session. So it's a great discussion. I know we can go on and on. We'll just on the topic of governance alone, I know we could talk all day on that, but I really appreciate your time. Thanks to all that have joined the live feed. Of course, we're here every first and third Wednesday of the month, so always at 8 a.m. Pacific. You find us, we'll be back in 2 weeks with another interview with another fellow MVP and another AvePoint community champion, which Stacy is also a member of that group, that body. So thanks so much for your time, Stacy, and thanks everybody for watching.
Oh, thank you, and anytime.